What's going on? Welcome to the Vancouver Fitness Podcast. We just changed the name from Fitness Outsource to Vancouver Fitness Podcast. It was the actual original name, but we didn't really like the whole direction that Fitness Outsource was going. So we're going to change it back to the Vancouver Fitness Podcast. So welcome to the Vancouver Fitness Podcast. I'm sitting here with Tanessa Shears, and she is a self-proclaimed biohacking expert, works with entrepreneurs and business owners on how to improve their productivity and how to just become better overall business owners through health, fitness, biohacking, and nutrition. So I'm really excited for this call because I've been watching Tanessa's stuff for a very long time, and there's so many things that we agree upon, and I want to challenge some of the beliefs that she has. And Tanessa, welcome to the podcast. Roll the intro. All right, Tanessa, welcome to the podcast. Super excited to have you here. And welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
So how about just start off by letting us know how you kind of got into biohacking and how you what brought you to where you are right now?
Yeah, well, I opened a personal training business in 2014 and that grew to six figures really fast. And I was enjoying, working with clients and, helping them improve their fitness and everything like that. But there came a point where I noticed a lot of my clients were actually entrepreneurs. And it was really interesting. And I said to them, I'm like, hey, you guys, what's going on? Why are all of you entrepreneurs? And they were like, Tanessa, originally we came to you to lose weight or to put on some muscle. And it was, a lot of fun and everything. But I started noticing that I just have more energy during the day in my business and I feel a lot more focused. And I was like, this is interesting. I think I'm onto something here. And so what ended up happening was over the years, I gradually started taking on some online clients and seeing the clients in person. A lot of them came with me actually into the online business, which was kind of fun. But slowly over time, I started expanding my awareness of what was contributing to this focus they were feeling in their business and showing up consistently and not needing to take days off because they were sick all the time or, they felt really tired. And eventually I ended up incorporating food and noticing how that affected their focus and their concentration and their energy. And then I went and got a designation as a sleep consultant. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really what's been missing. So between, the movement and the sleep and the food and everything like that, it all kind of wrapped together into biohacking, which is essentially you're just optimizing the way your body works from the inside and the outside. And the way I like to do it is we're always looking at return on investment because my clients, entrepreneurs, we understand return on investment. How much am I getting out for what I put in? Well, I want that with their health habits because we're busy. We don't have time to be on the internet scrolling, how many steps should I do per day? And what's the workout? I just want to give them exactly what works based on their own biology. And I use wearable technology like Oura rings and Fitbits and stuff like that to really bring together a well-rounded program to help them optimize the way their brain works.
So what would you say is the biggest thing that somebody can do to help them improve just general, what you're saying, productivity and just health in general? What's the biggest thing that somebody can do that's going to help them?
Yeah. What's funny? I used to really emphasize there are 4 pillars to health. There's stress management and there's food and there's exercise and there's sleep. But, after being in the trenches with clients and really helping them develop the skill set in these areas, what I learned really quickly is that sleep is the foundation that supports everything else. I mean, it helps you recover from your workouts. It helps you manage your insulin and your blood sugar so that you can stay more on track with the food choices you want to make. It helps you with mental clarity and feeling refreshed and recovery. So I find that when we can do something as simple as optimize our sleep, and we can get into a little bit of that if you want, but specifically we're looking at how long are we sleeping and the quality of sleep we're getting, everything else becomes so much easier.
Yeah, totally. We talk about sleep so much. And on our last episode here, we actually talked about sleep. And what I said inside that episode was I used to sleep for 4 hours per day and I thought I was just being optimal entrepreneur. And I realized after just sleeping, focusing on my sleep, because I had a coach who kind of forced me to do it, that my life completely changed after that. All of a sudden, everything else was so much clearer. I was able to stick to my diet better. I was able to get better workouts. I was nicer to people. It was insane how much just getting an extra couple hours of sleep improved my life. So I'm completely on board with you. So what would you say is optimal amount of sleep for somebody that, for anybody? What would you say?
Yeah, well, there's that general recommendation of 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, but I do find that it is specific to the individual. Like I do find on average that females do need about 20 minutes more sleep, and that's a lot what the research does support. But specifically, what I find is that every individual has a sweet spot. So naturally, I was like, well, I'm going to go with 7 hours to start because that's the minimum. And I found that I didn't quite get that, clarity and mental sharpness when I was waking up the next day. So I kept pushing it. And I found actually 7 hours, 45 minutes for me is that sweet spot where anything around that area, and I'm feeling really clear, but I do notice a difference with half an hour less. So one of the processes I often will work with clients on, for example, is we will look at how much they are sleeping now, and we will add half an hour, and we will do that in incremental change because a lot of the people I work with, we're 5 hours, it's 6 hours, we're in that sleep deprived state. So adding that little bit every week and being like, okay, how does this feel? Do you have the time? Do you have the capacity to try to sleep a little bit more? But I do like on average to set the target goal somewhere between 7 and 9 and then find out what's good for the individual.
So 7 to 9, yeah. So I find that most people who need like more than 8 usually are people who are working out a lot. But do you find that as well?
Yeah, I've either find that it's the people that work out a lot or the people that are highly stressed. Like they have very intense businesses. They're responsible for teams. There's a lot of money going in and out, that kind of thing, or where they're responsible for making a lot of decisions during a day. Like I have a client and she is a CFO to multiple, 7 and 8 figure companies, and she sleeps more than the average. But I also know that during the day, she's doing a lot of calculations, decision making on a very high level. So I think you're right with the exercise, but I also see it with entrepreneurs that are making high level decisions all day long.
Yeah, totally. I don't make decisions unless I had a good sleep. High level decisions unless I had a good sleep.
That's just good business practice.
Yeah. I also find that there's usually just one big thing that I do, which for me, like magnesium, it's insane how much my sleep improves. I would say like magnesium and like lion's mane improve my sleep tenfold every single time I take it. And you can notice when you don't take it. So what do you find like are the biggest things that somebody can do to help them improve their sleep? I'm talking about like cheat codes here.
Oh, we're cheat codes.
I want to know like.
Okay, are we talking biohacky stuff or like where I would start someone?
I'm talking. I want to know like. I think what people want to know is like, what can I take to help me improve my sleep?
Yeah, you know what? The only thing I take for sleep is magnesium. But specifically, if we want to get into the biohacky part of it, there are different types of magnesium. There's magnesium citrate, there's magnesium oxide, there's magnesium biglycinate, threonate, and all of these actually have different functions and how they interact. And studies have shown that if you take magnesium biglycinate or threonate, specifically, it doesn't have the unwanted side effects that some magnesiums do, like the diarrhea, unfortunately. But
citrate, also known as shitrate.
Yeah, so the biglycinate and the threonate are really effective. And I actually found when I started experimenting with the magnesium biglycinate, my Oura Ring records movement while I sleep. And I used to get, the little white ticks, which were like, you rolled over, you were shuffling around. When I started the magnesium about 90 minutes before bed, that movement graph disappeared. It literally says no movement detected during the night. And I can tell on the nights I miss it. I just look at my Oura Ring and I'm like, yeah, I missed it. That night I was tossing and turning a lot.
Wow, that's so interesting. Yeah, I never actually looked at the stats on my movement on my Oura Ring that much. But why 90 minutes? Do you find that that's how long it takes to absorb it?
Yeah, I often will recommend 60 to 90 minutes before bed because I find that like if you're looking at optimal rise in melatonin, it takes 60 to 90 minutes as well. So I kind of include that as like the beginning of my wind down routine as well, which I keep as 90 minutes for me. So it's part just the routine and it's part also to make sure that it's in effect by the time I'm falling asleep.
Okay, so now back to kind of what we were talking about before, like as a beginner, is that something that you should just implement right away? Magnesium? Is that just like an easy fix?
It could be. I mean, it's something I would start, but there are so many better ways that I do like to start outside of supplements. I feel like a lot of our culture is very much, what can I take for that? And
that's why I wanted to ask the question.
Yeah, I want to go to the doctors and can I just get a prescription? You know what I mean? Where I think a lot of the disconnect with health professionals and medical professionals is like, okay, but what are you doing in the 2 hours before you go to bed? I mean, like, what does your day look like? What are you eating? How long before bed do you stop eating? And these questions are being answered before that we're going to supplements as a quick fix. So yeah, it is something you can do. But if you are staring into screens before bed, if you are eating too close to bed, if all of these things are happening in your evening routine, you can take all the magnesium you want. It's not going to override the fact that you're essentially screwing with your biology.
So what about for people who like they need to watch TV, like, or else they can't go to bed? Like, what do you tell those kind of people?
Yeah, I think that is one of those things that is a belief and more of a comfort thing. And I often find that, and I use it as myself, like Netflix and TV is a way of just wanting to turn off from the day. But when you really understand how good your brain and body feels after a really good night's sleep, you no longer need those things to help you fall asleep, right? So I often find that those of us that need that kind of thing, we're stuck in like hypervigilance. It's when you're checking your Gmail or you're constantly checking your phone or you're like stuck in like fight or flight almost, like you're becoming a human doing. It's like go, 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 one activity to the next, to the next, to the next. And you get to the end of the day and you just want to just stop. And that kind of just helps. It's what I call buffering. It's essentially just using something to avoid what is going on and for feeling. So, I mean, I would challenge anyone that there are things that you can naturally include as part of your evening routine. And I mean, if evening routine sounds intimidating, heck, try starting with 20 minutes before bed. There are little things that you can do like that help your body unwind so you can fall asleep. Because the way that most of us approach sleep is like we're driving a car, and instead of, going into your garage or backing in your driveway, you know how you'd naturally slow down, you'd brake and slow the car down? What we all end up doing is we just like full on gas into the garage. Like we need to slow down before you plan to stop. And I think like looking at that and figuring out what am I missing in my day, that I need these things like this, like TV to fall asleep.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it is a cycle though. Mm-hmm. So people, they have a crappy sleep and then they're stressed throughout the entire day. And then they need that unwind where they're watching TV to unwind and stuff. So what's the best way to break that cycle?
Well, what we start looking at is what are you doing with your downtime? Because a lot of people will say like, oh, the kids just went to bed, or I just finished cleaning up the house or walked the dog and I just need some time for me. I need to unwind. And then that's usually what ends up, rolling episode after episode into Netflix or whatever it might be, video games that goes into your sleep. But what I often ask my clients when we're going through this is I say to them, okay, what are you trying to get out of this downtime? Like, what are you trying to feel? And they'll say like, oh, I just really want to feel relaxed. I just want to feel calm. I just want to feel like like I don't have to think during my day. And then I ask them, okay, is the activities that you're putting in this time block giving you that feeling? Like when you get up from 4 episodes of Netflix or whatever it might be, do you feel relaxed? Do you feel calm? Do you feel present or whatever it is you're after? And the answer is always no. Right? So I'm looking at in your downtime, are you including activities that make you feel the way you want to feel, or are you just escaping? So what I'll often recommend is that instead of, doing 2.5 hours watching TV, why don't we try doing an hour and a half of TV and then an hour doing something fulfilling? I mean, whether that be reading, or I've got a client that likes to do paint by numbers. Like there are things that we can do that create that sense of that recharged feeling and just tack it into that space between TV or video games or whatever it is and sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that cycle is hard to break for a lot of people though. Like they're so attached to watching TV. So what do you tell somebody to do who's like super attached to it, who just doesn't understand how big of a problem it is? Like what would you get somebody to do? Especially like let's say like not even an entrepreneur, let's say like an average Joe who could highly benefit from like just like reading a book before bed, but just can't bring themselves to do that. Like they just like find that it's like next episode, and then now it's time to go to bed, and it's like 2 hours past your bedtime.
Yeah. First thing I would ask is how it's working for them. Like genuinely, like
I love that question.
How is it? Because if it is working, there's no point in changing it. But obviously, we find when people are coming to us, there's something that is not working. It doesn't feel the way they want to feel. So that's, I think, part one. And the second thing, I love always asking this. I'm like, what happens if we just change it for a week and just run it as an experiment? Because I find that like my crowd really likes the word like experiment and, hacking stuff like that. So I always offer this. What if we tried it for 1 week and you just see how you feel? Because if you get to the end of the week and you hate it, guess what? You never have to do it again. But on the off chance you get to the end of the week and you feel amazing, then you get to make the decision on whether or not you want to bring that back from a place that feels like you're in control of your decisions and you've had both experiences and you get to decide on it. Because I often find we're making that decision only ever having the one experience. We don't know what it's like to have a really good sleep. So I often, whether this be with food or sleep or any kind of stress hack that we try, I always like to say, why don't you make that decision having had both experiences?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, especially that question that you asked, like, is that working for you? We ask that to clients all the time, and it really puts them like in the spot, and they're like, yeah, you're right, because I'm here talking to you, so it's definitely not working for me. But so kind of back to the cycle thing where you get bad sleep, and then like these habits that you're trying to build are falling apart. And also something that I noticed that when you filled out your questionnaire, you said that people kind of think that you're like this perfect human. And so how do you prevent, like when you notice that you're going back into those kind of bad habits, like going on your phone before bed and Instagram or whatever, how do you realize what's going on and then break that habit as fast as possible? What do you do?
I'm literally in this right now. So
Mm.
for those of you guys listening, I'm 7 weeks postpartum tomorrow.
Mhm.
So I just have a baby. So basically, my sleep's a mess. I ate more boxes of cookies than I would care to admit to right before baby came. I haven't exercised in 2 months. Like basically, I could be starting at ground zero, except that I know that I've done it before. So what I do in my case is I like to do a little bit of a dream list. Like, what are all the fun things that I would like to play with or experiment with or try? And this is just really the science nerd in me. And I'm like, okay, I would really like to try, cold showers, and I would like to try, different food timing and all of this kind of stuff. And then what I do is I pick 2 or 3 very small ones, and I start there. And I think of these as my non-negotiables that I go through day after day, and I don't add on anything more until I completely mastered them. So honestly, my first ones that I put in there were like, okay, I'm going to meal plan and grocery shop because that's at the base of all this healthy eating. No point in setting the healthy eating goals if you don't have the food in the house, right? Start with that. The other one was do your physio exercises and get 7 hours of sleep per night, even if that means I have to take a nap because it got disrupted in the middle of the night. So these are 3 things I committed to. When I've gotten 2 weeks, 3 weeks of them, and they no longer need to be something that I'm like, okay, did I do this today or did I not? It's just more become who I am. Then I will add one more thing. And it's about that layering experience. And there are definitely some people who do really well with like jumping full in, like 100%. Like they'll do 75 hard as a way. Do you know what 75 hard is?
I literally just came across that today. I don't know where I
that's
saw
funny.
it, but what is that?
Yeah, there's an online business owner. His name is Andy Frisella, and he created this challenge, and it's exceptional. It's like 2 45-minute workouts per day, stick to a diet, take a selfie, read 10 pages of book, and drink 4 liters of water a day. Like it's exceptionally like intensive. So some people like jumping in like that. And if that works for you, go for it. But I do find that like when I'm thinking like, I've got stuff on my plate right now. I've got a 2-year-old and I've got an infant and I'm running my business and all of this stuff like that. And this needs to be something that's not another thing to do on my list. It's sustainable for me. So that's what works for me. So I think it's deciding which one of these 2 people am I and then leaning into it instead of being like, oh, I don't know, this is too hard or is this too easy? Just go with it. It's either going to be easy and sustainable or it's going to hard. It's going to kick your butt and you'll learn from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a great answer. And there's something that you mentioned, so I really want to change the subject because I'm so curious about this. Is you focus a lot on like, from what I see, like grocery lists, and also you mentioned something in your Instagram where you only go grocery shopping once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then when I read that, I was like, I need to start doing this now because I go to the grocery store maybe like 3 or 4 times a week just to grab little tiny things here. It's like, oh yeah, I wanted to make this, but I don't have this, and then I have to go to the grocery store.
Yeah, everything that I do is optimized for time and efficiency because we all have full lives. Last thing I want to do is, do the repeated grocery store runs. So what we've actually implemented is like, this is actually happening tomorrow. Tomorrow is Wednesday. So I will sit down and I will pick out 8 recipes. There will be 4 recipes for week 1, 4 recipes for week 2. I write out all the ingredients. I go to my cupboard and I'm like, what of this do I have that will last me for 2 weeks? And then I cross out everything I have. So I'm literally going and just buying the things that I need. We'll go to grocery shopping on Thursday and that'll last for 2 weeks. Now, we only used to do weekly, but then now that I have a baby, like baby screaming in Costco is no fun. So the bi-weekly, we're on run number 4 of it coming up, will be this Thursday. And it has worked exceptionally well because the other thing that it does, you don't overbuy and we don't have a lot of food going bad. And one of the neat things is I'm very spreadsheet oriented and I track our budget and money and everywhere it goes. We're saving about an average of $50 to $100 per week. Because when we go all the time, it's all like, oh, I really feel like eating that. That really sounds good right now. Whereas when you go once every 2 weeks, you better have pre-planned all those wants and needs. And the fact is, it just really helps you stay focused because there's not all the junk lying around in the house that you just bought on that random grocery trip on the way home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do you, which app do you use? Because I see you use an app to plan that.
I have created, I want to call it the first of its kind. I'm sure you could find it out there.
It.
Yeah, I did. So have you ever heard of Trello?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you do it in Trello.
I do. So
wow, that's genius. I would never have thought of that.
Yes.
It did look really familiar. I was wondering if okay, interesting.
Yeah, so I originally created it as just something that I use, but now it's a resource for my clients, right? So what I've actually developed is Trello. For those of you guys that don't know what Trello is basically like a project management software, but I've turned it into a recipe board. So they have these things on the board called cards, and they basically are able to have photos on them, and you can click on them, and there's information. So each photo is what the meal is, and inside is the ingredients and the directions and everything like that. And I've curated like something like 150 different recipes on that board, and they're sorted by like, do you want a stir fry? Do you want a sheet pan meal? Do you want a soup? Do you want a salad? So it makes it really easy come my grocery shopping planning day tomorrow to be like, yep, okay, I'm going to bring in this Buddha bowl. I'm going to bring in this. And it just really is visual, because I find one of those things when I'm meal planning, and I don't think anybody really enjoys meal planning, but I'm trying to make it enjoyable, is I really just like to look and see visually. I'm like, yes, taco bowls. That's what I want next week. So I actually have used Trello to create a visual meal planning system.
Wow, that is amazing. I'll show you my spreadsheet later, but literally like it just says, chicken, rice. Okay, that's
meat,
it.
Rice.
Yeah. And then, meat, rice. And I like next to it is just like a list of groceries that I assume that I don't have, but yours way is so much better. That's so awesome.
Yeah. And it's kind of nice because you can put links
You
in
should really
there.
sell that resource just as a standalone thing.
You know what I did a long time ago when it was in its infancy? It was kind of like Tanessa's meal prep system. It was back in the day when I used to do more like 6-week programs or one-off sessions and stuff like that. But now it's something I like incorporate into my bigger package, so to speak.
Well, if you don't mind, can I borrow it?
Yes, you can borrow it.
Okay, so with the nutrition, do you find like that you're eating the same things over and over again on a week-to-week basis?
I mean, fundamentally, there's a protein, and then there's a vegetable, and then there's a carb. You know what I mean? Fundamentally, I often find, though, that we are picking different recipes. But if I'm to be honest, like say there's 150 recipes on the board, we go through maybe 10. It's over and over again. It's like, give me the taco salad, give me the meatballs, like that kind of stuff. But it's essentially the same recipes, just on a different rotation. Yeah,
totally. I also find that just eating the same things over and over again just yields better results, because then you become an expert at making those things. And you usually, if you have 150 recipes and you're only having 10 of those are the best fucking recipes you can make. So it's usually your favorite foods. And they're, I'm assuming, healthy for you as well, right? Like you're not picking foods like burger and fries, right?
Yeah, every single recipe on there is no sugar, no flour.
No sugar, no flour. So why do you do that?
A lot of the philosophy that I teach from comes from whole foods. So basically, I describe a whole food as anything that came from the ground or had a mother at some point. So these are the foods that in general don't come with packages. They're foods that are real foods. And the reason I come at it this way is in my line of work, my clients want full optimization. They want body and brain. They want to be focused and they want to be clear. So my job is to help them eliminate inflammation, because inflammation can lead to brain fog, and brain fog is exactly what we don't want. It doesn't feel good. So what I'm actually looking at is something, it's a fancy term. It's called glycemic variability. So I am looking at what the foods that we are eating do to our blood sugar. And I like to teach a style of eating in which we eat whole foods that keep our blood sugar stable so that our energy is stable, so that we have good quality sleep, and so that we are really sharp and crisp with our thinking. So, I mean, are we no sugar, no flour all the time? No, but I think there's probably maybe one meal a week that we have flour or sugar at when we're not in like a 30-day kind of challenge that we like to do over and over again. But in general, I just find that it's if we're looking at peak clarity and performance with our brain, I really want to mitigate fluctuations in blood sugar.
So speaking of this blood sugar thing, and also just nutrition and biohacking, people find that keto actually has extreme like clarity benefits to it. So have you ever thought about doing keto, especially since like in biohacking world, keto is extremely popular from what I can tell anyway. I'm sure you probably know more about this.
Yeah, well, it really comes down to what is your brain using for fuel. And often when we get into a state of ketosis in which our body is now relying on ketone bodies for fuel instead of just stored blood sugar, those ketone bodies do burn what we call clean. So it does provide for that mental clarity and that focus and stuff like that. But there's a lot more for me personally that I like to take into account. And that is like, am I carb tolerant? Because everyone is so different. Like I have clients that I find tolerate carbohydrates very well. And I have clients that do not tolerate them very well. They get foggy. They feel like they gain weight really easily. And I like to think of it like as a fuel gauge, meaning that certain people find that they metabolize carbs very quickly and very well. And I find that that is me. So that is why I've never personally done keto, because I always find that I am able to get in what I like for leanness of my shape. My brain performs clearly and I have sustainable energy using, a half to 1 cup of rice at each meal or something like that. So it's really individual. And one of the processes that I like doing is we look at a variable called our HRV, or heart rate variability. It's a measure of how resilient our bodies are to stress. And you can get these off a lot of these wearable devices like an Oura Ring or a Fitbit. And so what I do is we will choose a way of eating, whether that be keto, or maybe we will just try out more carbs or less carbs. And we sustain this style of eating for, let's say, 30 days, and we will watch what happens to HRV. And I'll give you an example. I have a client recently, and we pulled out gluten-based flours, as opposed to things like rice flour, tapioca starch, which aren't gluten-based. And we watched her HRV over a month, and it actually jumped about 10 points on average, which is a significant increase.
Mm-hmm.
So this tells me there's something about that wasn't working for her.
Mm-hmm.
So to come back to your question about like, what about keto for this? What about this? I think it really comes down to looking at how your own body responds to this. Are you carb tolerant? Are you not? Is it something with the gluten-based flours? Is it all flours? Is it something to do with the protein lectin? Like there's a lot of things that go into
So
that.
have you tried keto?
No.
Okay, so then to play devil's advocate,
Yeah.
earlier you said something about like not making a decision unless you've done both sides. So why not?
You know what? It's because I think I've decided that I really enjoy how I feel. Like even being in this, semi-sleep deprived state, like I feel really clear and I feel good. And I don't know, I mean, you're right. I haven't tried it, but I don't feel that the extra effort that I'd put in would be worth any potential extra gain I get, given that I really like how I feel now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't feel like I'm foggy. I don't feel like I'm tired all the time. Like I don't feel any deficit that I need to fill. So I feel like I've kind of found my sweet spot. But you're right. Keto, I might feel like 110%.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a trade-off of where you are in your life and like, is it worth the extra energy that's going to go into tracking my calories or my macros, whatever, to ensure I'm in ketosis?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the boat with you as well. Like I'm not like super against keto. I don't advocate it for a lot of people because I just don't think it's that sustainable for most people. But I do have obviously some clients who love it and who really see good results, especially when it comes to like mental clarity. Like people who like, I think with keto, that's the biggest benefit that people claim is the mental clarity and sharpness through doing it. So with like, what would you say do you tend to be more carb focused or do you tend to be more fat focused with your diet?
My personal diet?
Yeah, like, or I guess, yeah. So this is going back to like, you'd recommend different things for different people, right?
Yeah, honestly. And for mine, I just feel like it's pretty balanced. And like, it's not the same day to day either because different recipes will have different things in it. And just naturally, sometimes I'm doing a salad with sardines on the top and the other time it's like a rice bowl. You know what I mean? So it really kind of just depends. But one of the things that I also think is really important to note is that there is a difference between, the ways males eat versus females eat, because males have a 24-hour hormone cycle. They get a testosterone boost in the morning and it drops off towards the evening. So just naturally, if you think about it, like work schedules, doing the same way of eating every day, doing the same exercise every day works really well for men because that is how their hormone profile goes. But if you look at a female hormone profile, you're looking at a 28 to 32-day cycle. So our blood sugar in the last half of our cycle is highly variable, right? We also burn more calories in that phase. So one of the things, if I get to the point with a client, for example, that whole foods are good, we're feeling like we have our stress under control, we're moving our body, like we have all the things, check, sleep is good. What I then start looking at is something called cycle syncing. So I will be looking specifically at, okay, if you're wanting to play with keto, the best time to do that is weeks 1 and 2 in your cycle because your blood sugar is very stable. And then looking at if intermittent fasting is at play, that is the week. Those weeks are optimal for fat burning, for boot camp style workouts, high intensity workouts, whereas the latter half, those are, our blood sugar's all over the place. So we really have to be mindful of how many carbs we're eating, at what times we're eating them. And it's the same way some people say like, it's so weird. I just did this workout last week and I was so strong. Why can't I lift the weight this week? A lot of that has to do with our hormones. So when it comes down to it, that's kind of like the level 2 of like, okay, I'm eating whole foods. Now, am I optimized for my hormones? Because there are certain times in, the month where like I'm going to schedule all my interviews because I know my brain is sharper here. I'm going to make sure my strength training is here. I'm most likely to add muscle mass here. So it's that kind of level 2 optimization.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. I love that. Like, just men and women are different. Yeah, totally. And they're going to require different things. So yeah. Do you find that, like, you mentioned earlier that men and women also have different amounts of sleep needs as well. So do women vary in the month as well? Like, they need more sleep towards their cycle as well?
Definitely. And there is actually a hormone called progesterone that makes us heat up. And if we think about the science of sleep, your body needs melatonin to kind of help the onset of sleep happen. And we often think of melatonin in like the supplement, but our body does produce it, right? And there's a couple things that enhance melatonin. And one of them is actually your body needs to go through a small temperature drop for melatonin to be released. Well, if you look at that later part in the month, progesterone makes our body temperature heat up. So we actually have harder times falling asleep and staying asleep in that latter half of the month. And not to mention, just the other hormone effects that are going on at that time. Cortisol is higher during that phase, which, keeps us more stressed out in the day. It's more likely to have more wake up at night. So during that last half of the cycle, we often need to spend more time in bed to achieve the same amount of sleep. It's not that we maybe need more, but it's just we need to allow more time to achieve that sleep because we're up a bit more awake, we're overheating, we're stressed out, that kind of thing.
Wow. Okay. So do you find that you're mostly working with women right now, or is it yeah, because you seem like you're like an expert with especially when it comes to women.
Yeah, it's a 50-50 split right now,
it's
actually.
A 50-50
yeah,
split.
It's the first time.
Wow.
It's always been a lot of women, but I've had 3 males on board in like the last 3 months. So it's a 50-50. Well, it's a 50-50 split.
Yeah, I can just see like with this information, a lot of women would be like super intrigued by that.
Oh yeah,
especially like my wife will watch this for sure, and she's gonna be super intrigued by this. So if you're listening right now, yeah, you'll know that I called you out. Awesome. But so we talk about sleep so much in this podcast, like we might as well just call it the Vancouver Sleep Podcast. It's insane. Like it makes a huge difference that people don't realize. And I think every single podcast we bring it back to sleep. But like right now, what are you doing with biohacking that people would consider is like the kookiest thing you do?
You mean like my red glasses that I put on an hour and a half before bed?
Okay, so you do the red glasses? Oh. I didn't find that they actually made that much of a difference. I've talked about this in another podcast as well. I also did I did it for a long time, and I found that just eliminating just phones and stuff instead of using them with like behind a red screen is it's better just to get rid of all that stuff anyway. And then if you're in a dark room, it doesn't make that much of a difference for me anyway. So you found it made a huge difference for you? Oh
yeah, I fall asleep sitting up. I fall asleep mid-conversation with my husband, but also
while you have the red light glasses or whatever?
Yeah, I often will I'll have them on basically from the time we start bedtime routine in our house with the little ones. So, we'll go through everyone has a shower and everyone, reads a book and then we go to bed and then I read and stuff like that. And so I find that when I put those on right at the beginning of that routine, I barely make it 10 minutes into my book. And I find that it works really well. But I mean, the whole purpose of those glasses is to substitute for the indoor electricity that we have. Like we didn't used to have this. Like our brains are exceptionally well positioned to respond to daylight, right? And light is one of the things that cues so many of the biological processes. Like everything in our body runs on a clock. So when I'm looking at nighttime and what's going on with my light, I like to think, okay, what would happen with the sun outside? So the sun starts up high in the sky and it comes low. Okay. It also gets less bright. 2, 3. It also goes from bright to red orange. And so I like to think if I really want to cue my brain proper melatonin production, I want to have good sleep, I want to engage in that wind down that we talked about earlier, I want to think about this. How can I turn off overhead lights and put on table lamps? That's simulating light coming lower in the sky, right? I'm looking at, okay, how can I put my dimmers on, dim the lights, or like take the intensity down? That's thinking of going from bright blue daylight into evening. And then the other thing is like, okay, if light is going from blue until orange, can I replace bedside light bulbs with an orange light or a red light? Or in that case, wear the red glasses. So I'm looking at how these things actually cue my brain because the way that we perceive light is actually on the bottom half of our retina and everything is flipped. So it's our brain perceives the light that we observe in the upper atmosphere. So by bringing all the light intensities lower, that's how it tells our brain like, hey, it's bedtime. We should probably start kickstarting this wind down process. But when we're staring into screens and smartphones and we have our bright overhead kitchen lights on or our bathroom vanities while we're getting ready for bed, you're basically just telling your brain like, don't worry about going to sleep right now. It's the middle of the day. We need to be wide awake.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at light quality is one of the easiest things that we can all do for free that help us sleep better.
So did you design your house in a way where you could turn off the lights anywhere and then have lights lower before you go to bed?
Yeah, so what we kind of have is like we have all of our pot lights that are downstairs. We have those on a dimmer switch, so it's really easy just to dim those. If we didn't have those, honestly, flipping on a table lamp and turning off the overhead lights. One of the things that gets people the most is the bathrooms. So those vanity lights are exceptionally bright. They're white and they're overhead.
Mm-hmm.
So what I will do instead is I will keep those off and I'll just turn the light on in the hall behind me. It's fully lit. I can see what I'm doing, but it stops the light from triggering my brain to stay awake. So that's something that I'll do like that. Honestly, put a salt lamp in your bathroom. Those are the red color and it really helps as well. And in our bedroom, we've switched to like yellow orange bulbs, or we just have a really small, like a very low intensity night light if we need to get up in the middle of the night with the kids. It's super low intensity because I really want to make sure that I'm not triggering my melatonin to turn off when we're up in the middle of the night with the kids.
Do you use light lamps to wake up?
I used to, but that was more so when I needed an alarm clock, because for me personally, one of the hallmarks of waking up well rested and clear and getting the amount of sleep I need is not needing an alarm clock, because we are the only species that terminates sleep artificially. And I so often talk to people and they wake up and they're like, I'm so tired, I'm groggy. Why is that? If we wake up in the middle of a dream cycle or a deep sleep cycle, it can take anywhere from 30 minutes to 4 hours for your brain to get up to proper functioning. Now, the brain usually will not wake itself up in the middle of a sleep cycle. It'll have it finished and it'll wake you up in light sleep. So when we use an alarm clock, the alarm clock does not care what cycle of sleep you are in. However, when you are waking up, just because your rhythm is in check and you're always waking up at that same time, you're going to be waking up at the end of a sleep cycle and feel a lot more alert and fresh. And that really just comes down to, are you going to bed within a 30-minute to 60-minute window nightly? And are you waking up consistently, even on the weekends? And I found that like how I feel during the day is so much better than, staying up late and sleeping in on the weekends. Like that sacrifice to me just isn't worth it personally. And I found that, it makes for a really nice routine.
Mm-hmm. I find that with my light lamp, because I do have to wake up in the morning, like I need an alarm, because I wake up at 4:30. Mm-hmm. So because I actually have to go to the gym to go train, but I find that like the light lamp, it turns on like as soon as even like the dimmest amount turns on, I'm up, and then I go and turn off the lamp, and then I wait for the actual alarm to turn on. But by that time, I'm like already kind of up, because I think it does start turning on about 20 minutes before the actual alarm starts turning on. And I found that after I started using a light alarm, that I did actually feel better when I woke up. But maybe that's the case, that like I just kind of like I interrupted it and then gave my body time to adjust. And then I actually like woke up, and that's why I feel fine. It's like waking up before you actually wake up.
Yeah.
But maybe you're right. Maybe it's maybe that's just in my head. Like, because that light is definitely just waking me up.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. Like I find that I wake up within a 15-minute window every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, this last couple of weeks has been a little crazy with a newborn.
15-minute window.
Within a 15-minute window.
Wait, do you go to sleep at the exact same time every day?
Pretty much. Like I am asleep between 8:45 and 9:15. And I am up between 5:30 and 5:45. It is like clockwork. But one of the things I was going to say is if you find that you're light sensitive, I'm very light sensitive. I have to sleep with a sleep mask even. If you're really light sensitive, there's something called a haptic alarm clock. And a lot of the fitness watches have it built in. It'll vibrate.
Vibrate, yeah.
It's a different way of using sensory information that's not as jarring.
I'm definitely just a sensitive sleeper in general. Like light, noise, anything will wake me up. So like vibrate for sure would wake me up. And also I don't like wearing things. Like the Oura Ring is great because it's so small. But yeah, like I can't go to bed with I don't want to say I can't. I'm sure I could. But I'd prefer not to go to bed with a watch on. So you sleep with your Fitbit on?
Oh, yeah.
And then you sleep with your Oura Ring on.
Yep.
So you look at both metrics.
Oh, you know it. I get up in the morning and I'm like, interesting. I wonder, I always can tell which one is more accurate. I'm a personal believer, and I've seen a lot of Fitbit data and a lot of Oura Ring data. I analyze them in many, many spreadsheets, and I feel like I can say that the Fitbit for sleep is way more accurate.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I don't even look at my sleep data on my Oura Ring because it tells me I get 50% of my night in deep sleep every night. Now, the recommendations are 15 to 20%, 30%, and you're like a sleeping whiz. 50% seems a little outrageous to me, especially when my Fitbit has me regularly clocking in at that 15 to 20% range. So I just think there's no way I'm spending 50% of my night in deep sleep. But I do definitely rely on the Oura Ring heavily for temperature prediction because it tells, where you are in your cycle all the time, which is pretty cool. And I rely on it for HRV. I find it's very accurate for that.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I had a feeling because I read online that that people did find that as well, that the Fitbit's more accurate. But yeah, I can't bring myself to wear anything. Yeah. Do you have all notifications off on it?
My phone does not connect it to anything. There's nothing that happens on this. I still have the basic one too. Just like I have a Fitbit Inspire HR. It's the most base. I don't even know if my phone could connect to it. I'm sure I could figure it out, but it's like the base model because it's really all you need. Like the other ones are all fancier and nicer. But one of the things is I really like the option to be disconnected from my phone. I don't want my phone vibrating on my arm. I see it all day as it is.
There's this battle that goes on in my head to just like get rid of my phone completely. And in the last week, I've been seriously considering just like getting like a phone that does not connect to the internet, just literally text call. And then if I need, I'll have my phone with me, but far the fuck away from me.
I actually have 2 phones in my purse right now for that exact reason.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you did it?
Yeah. So what I found was you're
going to convince me right now. Yeah. I'm on the edge of just getting rid of this thing.
Yeah. What I found was that it was my inability to watch a Netflix show and not be on Instagram at the same time. I was like, what is wrong with me? Am I deprived of stimuli that I just I can't? And then I'd find that I'd have my thumb hovering over Gmail all the time. Mm-hmm. And then I did this experiment where I deleted Instagram off my phone and I kept clicking the spot where the Instagram was, but it wasn't the Instagram tile anymore. And I would be opening up some random app. I was like, this is a problem. I feel like I've got ghost hands with this. So what I ended up doing was at the time, I just found like a junk phone. You know how everyone has those last couple cell phones and they put it in the closet just in case their phone breaks? Well, I brought it out and I put all work stuff. I'm talking Google Drive, Gmail, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the whole 9 yards, Trello, anything that my business is associated with on that one phone. And my other phone, all it is it's WhatsApp, it's text, and it's calls. And so when I'm shutting down at the end of the day, I turn that work phone off and it stays in my office. That helps me not go on Instagram. It helps me stay focused on my family and stuff like that. But it was super easy to just make that switch. And I've upgraded to a bit nicer of a phone now. But
do you find that it helped you? Because, I've been having this problem recently and it wasn't as bad before. But, well, here's the thing. I didn't have Instagram for, I think it was like over 2 years. And so I love life. And then now I started doing Instagram again. And I find that I'll just go on Facebook and Instagram and 10 minutes in, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I literally can't believe that I was doing something else. And then somehow I had to grab my phone for a second. And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, oh, I'm on Instagram watching videos. So do you find that doing this method prevents you from doing that?
Yeah.
Because it's usually when I'm doing work, right? That I just that it happens.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is one of the things that I have actually implemented in my business is I rarely use the Instagram app. So the only thing I will use the Instagram app for is stories. Beyond that, I use the Instagram desktop version. It is super boring. You can post regular photos from it and stuff like that. But on the Instagram on desktop, I can basically do what I need to do, which is, respond to DMs, connect with my community and stuff like that. But it's not fun to scroll on your computer. Mm-hmm. So I don't work with my phones within arm's length reach because I make sure that everything that I need to do, unless it is designated time to do stories, for example, is on the desktop.
So how did you situate your workspace to have your phone away from you and then still be able to be logged in?
Yeah, I mean, on the floor.
Where do you put your phone?
On the floor. Or behind me. I've got a little console behind me. Just put it behind me.
Okay, so I could just throw it over there.
Yeah, it's if it's within arm's length reach, you'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was hoping that there was some kind of cheat code I could do for that one too, just to stop doing that.
Yeah, you know what? So this is on the theme of what we were talking about earlier of picking one small thing and doing it at a time. I read a book while I was pregnant. It was called Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. And he talks about this idea of, obviously digital minimalism and what it means and what he recommends when you do a 30-day digital detox, like a declutter. And this is one of those things that I want to come up to next because, I'm human like most people. And I find that one of the things that is really interesting is when I'm working, I'm wishing I was with my kids and my husband. I really just want to go hang out with them. And I'm up here in my office by myself. But when I'm with my kids, I'm on Instagram or I'm I'm working on something or responding to a client and wishing I was back working because I got stuff to get done. And I found that I'm never present in either place. And it's kind
I
of,
find the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Literally the exact same thing.
yeah, it's most of us, right? It's just like this inability to just be where we are and be present, right? And work for work and be with the family during family. So this is the next layer actually that I'm planning on bringing in 2 weeks, is like looking at cutting out all non-essential technology, period. I'm talking like phone stays in a drawer upstairs, because there's no need for me to have my phone when I'm with my girls, period.
Mm.
And that's something I want for me. And everyone gets to make different choices about what they want to do with their tech. But for me, I found that this is decreasing the quality of my life, is I can't be in one place, and I want to reteach myself. And I think we really have to go through those. And that's why I get my clients to do a 30-day no sugar, no flour challenge. It's not because there's something magical about no sugar, no flour and that we should keep it. It's the fact that this is going to push you out of your mental, you're going to become uncomfortable, out of your comfort zone with this. And I want to see what comes up. I want to learn what it feels like to get past that hard, obstacle that's there of like wanting to grab my phone and the physical discomfort that comes with not being attached to our phones. Like, I'm ready to feel that and have that be done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm going for next.
Would you keep that like phone that just has like the WhatsApp and stuff on it, like the text message call phone near you, and then just like put the other phone completely away?
For me, I'm going to eliminate both of them, because my husband's at home with me. I've got my girls here, and my phone is on silent or airplane mode almost all day anyways. My family hates it. Nobody can get a hold of me. But I want to, the whole principle behind it is like, when I do this, I want to be the one who decides when I'm interrupted, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And I find if even the phone with texts and WhatsApps and stuff in there, the phone decides when I get interrupted. And there's been some research studies that have shown that when you hear a text message sound or when you see a blinking light, the desire to answer and respond to it will increase to the point of discomfort in which you just pick it up to alleviate that discomfort. Mm-hmm. I don't want that. I want to be the one that decides. So I will be leaving them both upstairs.
Yeah, I think I need to get to that point. Like the phone distraction thing is just getting insane. Yeah, and this is just from being on Instagram for maybe like 2 months, and like I just can't stop using it. Like, addiction came on right away. And when I first kind of installed Instagram, I'd find that it would be hard for me to remember to go on it, to post for business. But then now I just can't even put it down. And then I'll also find that like I can't even put it down, and then I don't even end up posting at all.
Yep. And then you're like, dang it.
Yeah, like all that time I could have spent actually like building my business.
Oh, yeah. But the fascinating thing is, one of the things I find I'm working with clients on over and over again is their ability to be bored. Mm-hmm. Like, as a society in general, we have completely lost our ability to be bored and just to sit there. Like, we can't stand in a line anymore. We can't even watch a Netflix show without our phones in our hands. And I know I'm guilty of that too, right? Like, so it's relearning how to be bored. And one of the things I'll ask my clients to do is I say, okay, I want you first thing in the morning, I just want you to go and sit out on your deck with a cup of coffee for 5 minutes without your phone. And it's amazing the struggle that comes with that. Mm-hmm. And just the physical sensations of just feeling like your skin is crawling.
Like anxious.
Yeah. It's like, well, you'll find you're like, well, what do I do with myself?
Yeah.
Because we have so much input during the day. I mean, we listen to podcasts while I do in the shower, when I'm driving, when I'm cleaning, mm-hmm. There's music on, there's a YouTube video on, I'm having a conversation, I'm working with a client, I'm on Gmail. Like, we have input all day long. But when do we ever actually expose ourselves to our own thoughts and how we're feeling? And I think that's where that discomfort comes up, is like, oh boy, this is how I'm really feeling about my life, or this is what I'm really thinking about my life. And it's so much easier just to buffer, like we were talking about earlier, and tune it out than it is to deal with that. But I think that if we really want to manifest change in our life, whether that be our health or our fitness or our focus or whatever that is, we need to be willing to come face to face with that discomfort.
Wow. Yeah. The quiet is so hard for me. The day when Rogers like went out, and then I was driving to work and I couldn't listen to a podcast, I felt crazy. Like, and I'm so used to even like listening to podcasts on the way to work. I couldn't even listen to the radio. Yeah. Just like music. I was like, fuck this. Yeah. And I just sat in the car quiet, and I was just like stressed all the way to work.
Yeah. It's like we have no time in our life where there's no input. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really just like, okay, what do I think about when I have to do the thinking, when I'm not being told what to think, when my ideas aren't influencing? I think that's why Instagram is so difficult, because as we scroll, like, it feels like a passive process. And I'll often get people to say to me like, oh yeah, just go on Pinterest because I just want to look at decorating stuff. But every post you scroll by, you need to make a decision. Do I agree with it? Do I disagree with it? Should I comment? Should I engage? Does that make me angry? Do I love? Like, we need to constantly be making all these decisions from all this input, whether it's podcasts or whatever it is. And it exhausts us. And we wonder why we hit the end of our day. We're hyper vigilant. We can't turn off. And then we just like make it go away. Just turn on the Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And then we don't go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And it compounds this. Like it's just one giant cycle. So that's why I think, you either start small with the 5 minutes in the morning, you get good at hearing yourself think, or you go all in and you knock out tech for 30 days. It's which person are you in which situation? But I think like if you really do want to change, I think like no matter what it is, it always comes down to being willing to go up against the discomfort.
Yeah, man, the phone is so bad for you. And another thing that's like really bad for you that I really want to bring up that we always bring up in the podcast and something that we were just talking about before we went on air, alcohol. And I really want to know, like, what do you like? A lot of people don't realize that it doesn't take much to be an alcoholic, in my opinion. I think that if you're drinking on even like on a weekend, a weekly basis on the weekend, if you're drinking regularly like that and you're using it as a way to cope or just like escapism, I think that you could easily consider yourself an alcoholic, especially if you can't find a way to stop doing that. So how do you deal with people? Because this is an addiction, right? Even if it is just on a weekly basis, like how do you deal with people how do you explain to them that how detrimental it is for them, not just for their health, which is obvious, but also just like productivity and sleep and all that stuff.
I think one of the most imperative things that comes with real change is being able to see what is happening, and then you can make an educated decision on it. So one of the things I've often had clients tell me is, oh, I just use it to unwind at the end of a stressful day. And then it's nice because I can fall asleep really easily. Like those are the two things I hear quite often. So where I like to start is I'm like, great. So let me tell you what actually happens to your brain when you sleep, when you have a drink. So we often think, great, I fall right asleep. But alcohol actually has a sedative effect on the brain. While we feel like we conk out and go into deep sleep, we actually don't achieve sleep in the brain. It is sedation. When that sedation wears off, it is very hard to get back to sleep. So what ends up happening is in that latter part of the night, it is tossing and turning. You're up, you have to pee, you're thirsty. All of these kind of things happen at this end of the night. And if we look at the science of sleep, the structure of sleep, the majority of our dreaming or rapid eye movement sleep happens in the latter half of the night. Now, if we look at what happens in our brain while we dream, one of the things is it helps us to manage our emotional state. So if someone is deprived of REM sleep, they will often swing very easily into anxiety or overwhelm, and little things will set you off. Like, you've ever had one of those days where you've had a disrupted sleep and you feel irritable all day, or you're angry, or you snap, or you don't feel as nice. This is literally because the part of the brain that is responsible for our emotional stability is affected when we don't have REM sleep. Alcohol, while it helps you fall asleep, heavily disrupts REM sleep. So what happens is you go into your next day and you are not as easily able to manage the stress and the overwhelm of the day because you lacked the REM sleep. So you get to the end of the day and it was an overwhelming day, so you have a glass of wine and the cycle continues, and your brain never gets caught up on that sleep quality that really enforces emotional well-being and stability, right? And that's never mind the fact of all the stress it places on your body. Like we've been talking about HRV, heart rate variability. It's a measure of the stress on your body. So when someone has a drink, your HRV will drop. And that basically means your body is under a severe stress. And it can take 3 to 5 days for your body to recover from this stress. So even if you're having 2 drinks a week, your body is feeling the effects of this. Now, this is not to say you shouldn't drink or you should drink. This is just, okay, you've now seen what is happening. You get to make the decisions on what you want. And if you're struggling with, maintaining a weight that feels good, if you're struggling with your emotional well-being, if you're struggling with mental clarity, if you any of those things, your energy is not very good, one of the very first things I would cut out would be alcohol.
Mm-hmm. So let's say, is it better just to go to 0, do you think?
I think the fact that there's a 3 to 5 leg time on how it affects your body and your mental performance, I mean, that gets to be a decision, right? Mm-hmm. That gets to be a decision for each person. I mean, if you're thinking like, well, I only really need my focus Monday to Friday, you might be able to get away with having a drink on Friday night because you don't go back till Monday morning. Mm-hmm. But I think as well, the reason personally I stopped drinking 4 years ago was because I found that I was one of those individuals that I felt it for days. Mm-hmm. And it got to the point for me where I was like, I just don't want to be sacrificing a day every week recovering from 3 or 4 drinks on a Friday night. And for me, it just felt like I got 1/7 of my life back for me because of how I reacted. I was always groggy and tired and I had headaches and I felt dehydrated. I never worked out. Like I was missing 1/7 of my life. And when I looked at, for me, that trade-off, it was an easy decision for me.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, because I would consider myself like a non-drinker at this point, like drinking once every 6 months. I found that I had zero hangover anytime I drank, even for my wedding, like when I drank like last month or whatever, zero hangover. But the productivity and just my ability to just stick to my diet, have good workouts, all fell through the floor like for an entire week. And so that's what made me want to stop drinking. But I can imagine for people who don't really get the side effects of drinking alcohol, like how it could lead them on to like thinking that like they're actually okay.
Yeah.
And so how do you can see it as coach, right? You can say like, oh yeah, like you're drinking like 3 or 4 times a week. Like this is obviously clearly not helping you, but somebody might just say like, oh, I never feel hungover though.
Yeah.
How do you convince them?
Well, at the same time, I think it's just something that one of the stances I take in my coaching practice personally is I'm not the person to try to convince someone. My job is you hired me to give you best practices and my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I often will tell clients, like, while I will be direct and honest with you, it needs to be a change that comes from you. Because if I'm trying to coerce you into this decision because it technically is the most optimal, I find that those are the clients that don't stick with it. Mm-hmm. So I'm always like, okay, if I can educate you and show you an alternative and ask that maybe you try it for a week and see if you like it, see the differences, then you get to make those decisions. And I think like it has to come from a place of being self-motivated and wanting that change. Because it's very similar to like caffeine. A lot of people say they can have a cup of coffee before bed and go to sleep. While sure, you can fall asleep, that does not mean it's not affecting the architecture of your sleep and the quality of the sleep you're getting, right? It's the same thing. Like, yeah, you can fall asleep. Yeah, you might feel fine, but do you see for room for improvement? Do you think you could feel better? Do you want to try? And I think people need to be open to that coming into it, because if people are just like, I need to keep my drinking, I think that that's something that is going to be their decision. And we do our best to mitigate by developing really good wind down routines and, really good health practices in other areas.
Yeah, we usually tell people like, okay, yeah, you can have a drink, but it has to be 4 hours before you go to bed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that usually that definitely helps. And so then they can still have alcohol, but it won't affect their sleep that much. Yeah, like there's always workarounds is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing as like right now I've got a newborn waking me up a couple times a night. So I have to be extra diligent with my sleep hygiene and my sleep habits if I want to protect the sleep I am getting. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, okay, there's a trade-off here.
Okay, so how about that? How about for moms? Like, what do you recommend for people who have to have to wake up multiple times in the middle of the night?
Okay, so one of the things that I find moms doing all the time, and this is some unsolicited advice, so I'm just telling it, don't go on your phone while you're feeding the baby. I hear this all the time because it's like, I'm going to be real, when you're feeding a baby 8 to 10 times a day, it can be boring, right? I mean, it's a lot of time. It's quite the time commitment. And I find that when I often talk to people, they're like, yeah, or I'll get Instagram messages or check-ins from my clients and it'll be at 3 a.m. And I'm like, I see you.
What are you doing?
What are you doing over that time? Because when we look at our phones and that brightness and blue of the light, it doesn't even matter. It can be red light. If it's of a certain intensity, it dead stops melatonin. Mm-hmm. It makes it very challenging to get back to sleep. It makes it very challenging to obtain any quality of sleep afterwards. And then we've often find that we have new moms that are feeling absolutely exhausted. So we're looking at how can we protect that? So we need to, as best we can, maintain consistent sleep start times and end times, watching what you're doing in that time before bed, protecting the sleep you are getting. But I think the biggest mistake I see is getting up and going on the phone. Like I try my best to keep my sleep mask on the whole time.
While you're feeding?
Yeah, for sure. I'm like, you're kidding if I can tell myself I'm still asleep. But I mean, that works really well. And sleeping with earplugs and, anything you can to really protect the sleep you are getting.
So on the topic of kids, do you let your kids or kid, your other one can't see yet?
Not more than a foot in front of her face.
Do you let them go on like screen time? Do you allow screen time?
No.
Zero.
Yeah, it's not a judgment on anybody that does that either. It's just we don't even own an iPad.
Mm.
We don't give her our phones. The only time she will see screens is if like Flynn and I, my husband, if we're watching like, a 20-minute episode while we munch on dinner or something like that. But she doesn't care what's going on. She's 2 right now. But no, I mean, I grew up reading. I grew up without screens, and I really like the way I feel I turned out. So I'm trying to replicate as much of that as I can. And I also, I do have a lot of advantages at the same time. I mean, my mom helps out a ton. My husband is at home taking care of the kids. So, I mean, I do have that advantage that there is someone there to help me entertain them as well. And that's not always the scenario. Some people, unfortunately, we need the help we can get. If you're a stay-at-home mom and you're working at the same time, and that putting your kids and helping them watch a movie, if that's what helps you get through, then that's what it is. I think we all have different circumstances, but the choice we've made is, given our circumstance, was no screens.
Yeah, so we're pretty much on no screens as well. But we do, like, I know Susie, when she has to, especially when they're agitated and she has something to do, there's like this 10-minute video that she kind of goes to, and you just turn that on. It's crazy how fast they shut up and for how long
It's
they
like
can shut up.
crack.
Yeah.
For babies.
Yeah.
It really is when they're not exposed to the screen. And I actually found the reason we never had a hard stance on screens either way. But the reason I made the decision I did is because I found when I gave her those 10 minutes of screen times, like in those times where I had to make a phone call or something like that, and I turned it off, I noticed that she was more irritable all day long, and she cried, and it was like fighting. And I was like, oh, this doesn't feel good. Like it was obviously something that she really, really, really liked. And while I get that, it wasn't just something, it was a battle I wasn't willing to go through over and over again.
The only worry that I have is as they kind of grow up, that they have to know how to use iPads, and they have to know how to, like, because just technology is going in that direction. Like, you knew how to read a book when you're a kid. Like, now they have to know how to use an iPad in order for them to be able to function in society. I feel like it's going to get to that point.
Oh, they'll have to figure out when they get there, right?
Yeah,
I
they'll
think
learn
kids are
fast,
so resilient.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I am a little bit worried though, for sure, because you're gonna have kids who are just like blown past them already, who've been using iPads for years, and then they just like learned how to use it the other day.
Yeah. Well, I think, as long as the plan sticks, we're planning on homeschooling. So
Yeah, that's our plan too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we can direct it a little more. I don't have a clue what homeschooling even entails. And I'm hoping to also bring in someone to help us facilitate that. That would be nice. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can do that the good old school way. The kids are in elementary school in the 90s, it was all pen and paper.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Tanessa, you know what? It's already been almost, over an hour now. So let's wrap this up here. Thank you so much for coming on. I think I have a lot of changes to make in my life. I think I'm not going to be on my phone tonight. Like, I think that gave me the motivation because I've been kind of stuck in a rut as well. And I appreciate all the information that you gave us. And if anybody needs to find Tanessa, it's Instagram handle and...
Yeah, it's at Tanessa Shears. Come say hi. I always like people that come say hi.
And TanessaShears.com, right?
Yeah, that's the website. Yeah, and I got a podcast, Becoming Limitless. If you're just like, oh, these hacks are cool, there's an episode on every hack. I guarantee it. Yeah,
you already filmed like hundreds of episodes, right?
Oh yeah, I think I'm in like the high 50s for that. But on my YouTube channel has like, even back from like my early personal training days where it's like the cringe videos. I'm up at like 300 videos or something.
Well, there's a lot of videos for people to go through. And thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.